All right, thank you. So next up we have Imaan Ghoor, who is from UCT and is now at DNA Economics. So please take it away, Imaan. Thanks.
Hi everyone, I'm Imaan Ghoor, and today I'll be presenting on fairness in water consumption experiments, understanding burden sharing preferences and conservation beliefs. I know that's a mouthful, but I will get into it. Just to give you some context on what my study is about. So my study looks at how do Cape Town residents think about fairness when asked to reduce water consumption during a drought, and how do socioeconomic factors and cultural values shape those decisions. As we all know, Cape Town experienced one of the most severe droughts between 2016 and 2018, and we almost got to day zero. So equitable and effective water conservation policies not only depend on technology or supply, but also on people's fairness perceptions and willingness to cooperate. Water restrictions can affect different households differently. So if you think of high income and low income households may be able to adapt or buy water, or they may have a borehole or a JoJo tank, whereas low-income households might not have access to sort of Plan B, so it can affect different households differently. My study just aims to address this gap of, we know very little about how different groups view fairness, so this is the gap that my study aims to address. So I have three main research questions. So how do high and low income households differ in fairness perceptions when asked to reduce water consumption? How do cultural worldviews or beliefs influence these perceptions? And then lastly, what does this actually mean for water policies? So to answer these questions, to my knowledge, I think it's one of the first field experiments on burden sharing in urban water conservation in a developing country context. So I'll just give you a little overview of my experiment. I realize my slides do not look as academic as everyone else. I've now moved into consulting, so we've been very much told you need pretty slides. So I made pretty slides. So I think we all know what a threshold public good game is. But basically how it was framed is you have these four players, so you have four players in a group, two high income, two low income, and this is just to represent heterogeneity in society. Like I said, different households can adapt differently. You have rich households, poor households, and how it was framed is, okay, Cape Town there's a water shortage, you need to save water, how much are you willing to save? So there's this collective problem. If you think of it, if we all keep on using water, there's the risk of running into a water shortage, but if we each save a little bit, then in the long run there's that benefit. So why threshold public goods game? So threshold is a target that needs to be met. So as I said, we have four players, two high income, two low. With the high income, I'm given 10 minutes, so I'm trying my best to explain this game. But you come chat to me during coffee. I'm very excited about this. So they were given sort of water tokens, and each token that you sort of contribute translates into 1 kiloliter of water being saved. So the high income had 36 tokens, and the low income had 20 tokens. And so we have 36, 20, 20. So as a group, we have 112. And how it was framed is you need to reduce your water consumption by half because there's a likelihood of a drought. So as a group in this public pot, or how much you all save, it needs to equal to 56. If it does not equal to 50, so that was your threshold. And then how we framed it is, okay, if you sort of meet this 56, then whatever you contributed gets multiplied, the usual standard public good game, everyone gets a benefit. And if we tried best to mimic the experiment to a real life situation. So obviously the benefit would be you have water in your taps. If you don't meet the target, there was no penalty imposed, but you just got nothing back from the public good. Again, in real life, if you just keep on using water, there's not enough water for everyone. So that's how it was framed. So we said, Oh, I'm almost at 5 minutes. Okay, let me continue. And then I had 2 treatment groups, ungrouped, and the random group. In the ungrouped, you allocated either high or low income based on the neighborhood that you resided in. In the random group, you just randomly allocated to high or low income. So I had 2 parts in my experiment. So in the first part was how many tokens are you willing to contribute? So that was just, how many tokens do you want to contribute? In the second part, I'll show you in a moment, there was different burden sharing rules, and that translated into different amount of tokens that you would need to contribute. In the first part, we saw that both groups contributed close to half of their endowments, with higher income contributing more. This may be due to high income, they just probably had more to spare, and for low income, it might have been more expensive. And then also 27% of the groups didn't meet the target of 56. So this is the second part where we had 3 different rules, and I'll quickly go through it. So in the first rule, it says, okay, remember we were using 112, now we need to reduce by 56. So the first one says, okay, we are all going to use the same amount, and then the red blocks just shows what that would translate to in terms of how much you would have to contribute. The second one says, okay, instead of us all using the same amount, we have to contribute the same amount. And then the third one is a proportional rule. Because we had to, as a group, reduce by 50%, each one will reduce by 50%. So if you were high, you would now have to use 18 instead of 36, meaning you would have to contribute 18. So we showed them these 3 rules in the second part and asked them, which one do you prefer? Okay, and then I also as I mentioned, I wanted to see how cultural beliefs affect their choices. So we just have these 4 of them, that cultural beliefs, so cultural risk, theory of risk that we added in. And that's just high-level overview results. So low endowment players favored principles that minimized individual contributions. So they would have went for the equal water use, meaning the one on the previous slide, meaning that they chose one where you would only have to contribute 6 tokens. So you can see maybe this is just because one of the reasons could be because it's more expensive for them to contribute. High endowment players was a little bit different and more complex. So their preferences were influenced by education and policy attitudes. Just to say, with policy attitudes, we had sort of hard and soft policies. So hard policies was, okay, we'll impose tariffs or water restrictions, and softer policies is we can educate people. The burden sharing principles did not significantly influence high endowment players' contributions in the first stage, and also the cultural questions, they didn't really come up as significant in the first stage, but in the second stage, they were quite significant, with individualism and egalitarianism playing key roles. And I guess the what if of this study is that the study highlights the need for water conservation policies that reflect socio-economic diversity and fairness norms to foster cooperation and equity. Again, on policy implications, so support for poorer households must be central. So if they don't comply, or we see that they don't have a preference for everyone being equal, this might not work. In the study, most of them favored the proportional rule. So this could be proportional reductions may be the most publicly acceptable, and soft policies and communication matter. So many of the high endowment households who favored soft educational approaches contributed more. And then, equity perceptions can influence compliance. So policies seen as unfair, especially those that disproportionately burden low-income households, you may risk low cooperation. And then lastly, just on limitations and further research. So the sample, I don't know if I mentioned, sorry, but we used 315 Cape Town residents in the sample. The sample excludes very informal settlements and very low-income households with limited or no municipal water access. Cultural values were self-reported, so it may not perfectly reflect true behavior. And like I said, there was no penalty for not meeting the target. So maybe if we impose a penalty, we could try and make that more realistic. But also just to say we did have low-income households in the sample, so you saw how I struggled to communicate my game to you, so you can imagine with low-income households, we tried to make it as simple as possible, because obviously we want them to understand, because we are testing behavior, so we also need to make sure that they actually understand the instructions. And then, yeah, water conservation is dynamic, so further research could explore behavior over sort of repeated interactions or to see if behavior changed over time. Yeah, thank you.
Can we go here first?
Thank you. I was wondering if you tried to map this behavior with their actual water consumption.
Future research. Yeah. But we do, yeah, no, that would be cool to see. So the people that we use, the households, they do have municipal data, so we do have access to that, so I guess we can map that. And then also just to say the 36 and the 20, those amounts weren't random. That was based on pre-drought levels, so we used like income quintile, so the low income quintile, they were using about 19, but we just rounded off to 36 and 20, so it's nice numbers for the game. And then the fifth quintile, the high income households pre-drought, they were using about 37, so that's where the 36 and 20 came from.
Sorry, just a clarification question. So the game was the game framed as water, or was it just an anonymous public good?
So it was framed as water. So
I see, okay.
Yeah, it was framed as you are using so much water, you need to reduce. Every token that you contribute sort of translates into 1 kiloliter of water being saved, and the framing was around a drought.
Okay.
Hi, thanks very much. That was interesting. Was this your master's dissertation?
Yes, I
very
submitted this
impressive.
year. So.
Very, very impressive.
Thank you.
So I got one question about, you said there were two different versions, the one where you allocated people based on their actual socioeconomic status and the other one random. Did you get any results, differences in your results depending on that? And then also you sort of said both of them contributed the same. It seemed like actually there was a big difference. The rich people contributed 16 out of 36 and the poor contributed 13 out of 20. Did I get that right?
Sorry, I may have been nervous there and didn't mean to say the same. I meant both contributed close to half, not they both contributed the same. And then your first question of the earned and random, no, we didn't find significant results. So the rest of the paper just didn't focus on that then. But yeah, I guess I'm not sure why there was no significant results, but we could look into that.
Cool, thank you.
Okay.
Because I know you had to go quickly. Are people's actions here observable? Because with like in the game, because I know in water consumption your actions are very private, so there's no like social pressure to change your actions. But here, could people see what each other were doing?
So I know in some papers, so some literature, they do tell you what the other person does, or they ask you like a question, what do you think the other person's going to do? So they couldn't see that, but in addition to the game, we also did a questionnaire at the end, and then we told them, oh no, sorry, I can't remember the exact phrasing, but we did ask them, what do you think high income, or what are your beliefs about high income and low income? What do you think they're using? And interestingly, we found that the number that they reported was actually higher than what the people were actually using. So yeah.
Interesting. There's one more question. Last question. Cool.
Just out of interest, I just wanted to ask, were these tokens having any financial value that they'll get at the end?
Oh yes, of course. Experiment incentive. So I think one token was like R5 or something. So we did attach that to sort of a monetary value, because we also didn't want this to just be hypothetical. So yeah, in terms of if you meet the target, remember it will get multiplied and then you'll each get a benefit. So and at the end those were translated. We did pay them out basically. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks everyone.